What's up, everybody? Welcome on into OneSoccer.ca. You're watching OneSoccer Today. Andy Petrillo, Oliver Platt, Gareth Wheeler. Gentlemen, we have the Canadian Championship semifinals to talk about because the final is officially set. We're going to have a special guest join us as well to break down the Canadian Championship. I'm not given any kind of teasers as to who it is, but he'll be joining us in just a few minutes' time. This is a feel-good show, and we're going to start off with some feel-good news, gentlemen, because as we know, it was actually very scary last night in the late game between Pacific FC and Vancouver Whitecaps. After scoring a goal for Vancouver to go up 2-0, Ali Ahmed went down. It was a tackle by Toussaint. Looked like an innocent tackle. The way he went down, it was very awkward. We didn't quite know what the injury was. He was down for nearly 20 minutes. The stretcher came out. They put the sheets up to give privacy. You could see all the looks of concern on the players' faces, the fans' faces. And then we got an update from the Vancouver Whitecaps. So what we do know was that he was taken to hospital for observation. He was conscious. And then they came out with this saying they're pleased to share the following important message. Ali Ahmed is cleared to travel with the team back to Vancouver, because that was the thing, gentlemen. We weren't sure if he had to stay overnight for observation as well. Ahmed suffered a concussion with a momentary loss of consciousness. He regained consciousness, was transported to the Victoria General Hospital ER. He received a full evaluation at the hospital, including a CT scan, which returned at normal level. So sigh of relief, guys. Sigh of relief. We wish him the best. Speedy recovery, obviously, when it comes to the head. You just don't know. You know, we've all heard the story of broken bones. You always know. It can be about 6 weeks. But you never really know when it comes to between the ears. So hopefully he takes care of himself. And we wish him a speedy recovery. And then he gets back on the pitch soon. Because Gareth, that was, I mean, when it's ticking, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and the game hasn't resumed yet, you really start to worry.
Yeah, I mean, the only visuals we had was like the awkwardness of the fall. It was just so unorthodox. Like, you're right. Typically on the field, you know, it's a clash of heads. It's clear what the issue is. Um, leg break, something along those lines. It's much more clear. We just simply did not know, and no one really knew. But shout out to the people at Starlight, the people in Langford for their quick action, the medical staff with the Vancouver Whitecaps, and as well as Pacific for dealing with that situation. And we wish Ali Ahmed all the best. Like we said it last night, like he's thriving. He scored a goal. He's just such a really exciting emerging talent in Canadian football. And at such a young age, a Canadian soccer success story, you know, kind of going the long route in order to reach this level of prominence in his first full year with the first team. So we want him to be, most importantly, healthy, back on his feet as soon as possible and getting back to doing what he loves the most. So the best of luck to him going forward. And we're thankful that it appears that that he's okay.
Yeah, obviously a concussion, still a serious injury. So I wish him the best with that. And hopefully it's something he can come back from sooner rather than later. But obviously, like you guys said, it's great to hear that the worst that we were worrying about has been avoided, that he's back with the team and was able to travel back. And yeah, he's a player I had a chance to sit down and talk to a couple of weeks ago, and he's got an amazing story, you know, obviously from Toronto, now playing for the Whitecaps, bounced around Europe, you know, just tried everything basically to find his opportunity, and eventually it came in Vancouver. And like Will said, he's absolutely thriving right now. So a player who I think obviously his health is primary right now, but if he is healthy and playing, I think he's got a real chance of being in contention for the Gold Cup this summer and Canada opportunities in the future as well. So hopefully we see him back on the pitch as soon as is possible and back in form, because he's been playing fantastically well.
We know it was tough for the players to refocus post-game. Even Vanni Sartini said at halftime, he's like, I didn't even know what to say to the players. You don't talk about the game at that point with your players because they're so worried about a teammate. They were up 2-0 at that point. Then in the second half, Betcher goes on and scores to make it 3-0. That ended up being the final. He did the 22, which is the number that Ali Ahmed wears. So Vancouver Whitecaps, they defeat Pacific 3-0. They're in the final against CF Montreal. Let's digest the Canadian Championship a little bit more with our special guest, head coach, TSS Rovers, who gave us the feel-good story of the Canadian Championship this year. Will Cromack joining us here on the show. What's up, Will?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Great having you. I am so happy you decorated your background for the occasion.
Yeah.
Really exciting.
White walls, ready to go.
Business.
You don't want to see the rest of my house.
Yeah, a little bit of a mess. It's okay. You picked the cleanest corner. But it's okay because we're listening to the words that you're saying anyways. We're not going to pay attention to the background. So first of all, after you got eliminated, you were the feel good story. You were the inspiration story. Were you still okay to watch the rest of the Canadian Championship, or did you just not want to look?
No, I mean we're first and foremost Canadian, right? Canadian football, so that has to be what we're watching all the time. Looking for little spaces where someone might need one of our guys, or someone might need someone on the next round. So this is important that we watch, and we watch it for the joy of watching the game as well. But this is ours, right? We're supposed to be thrilled about seeing this, and that's why it was easy for me to say no problem. I'm happy to watch because I'm going anyways.
Well, we thought that this could be the year, right? That was the theme as well when it came to Canadian Premier League teams. Were they closing the gap? Could this be the year that they go all the way and make it to the final, even possibly lift the Voyageurs Cup? And a lot of that was also fueled by the fact that TSS Rovers is, a semi-pro team, becoming the first to beat a pro team in the Canadian Championship. So we're like, ooh, with the good vibes kind of spread on over to CPL teams. Wasn't the case last night, as both Forge and Pacific, the two remaining CPL teams, fell. Let's begin with that late night game. What did you make of the 3-0 win of the Whitecaps over Pacific?
Well, notwithstanding the injury, which sort of deadened it a little bit, I was left a little bit wanting. I really thought these guys have a style, and given the tightness of that pitch, that would have really allowed the fans to sort of get into it. When you start as well as they did, they started the first 6-7 minutes, a few tackles, a few things that can kind of light up a crowd. You see this play here. This is just a phenomenal hit, and it just kills the vibe. This one, everybody's going to be upset about. Happy that it's this lad after his injury afterwards, but I was left a little bit wanting for the whole affair. If you can hold that out a bit, the fans start to get into it, because 0-0 for them right now would have been a much more palatable, like Forge had, but totally different because it was their home crowd. So I was hoping that more of that could start making some of these guys a little bit nervous, kind of get them thinking, we don't want this to go to 60, 70, 80, 90 is straight to pens. The problem was it just, one goal, a world-class, first of all, the technique on Schaaf to hold off his marker there, keep it on his strong side, and then attack to put Gressel in that's top quality stuff. All we needed to do at that point, Pacific-wise, was to make them play backwards. But world-class finish, that deadens the crowd. Another one that really you don't want happening at any level. Makes it a real uphill battle. But now the crowd is getting quieter. The injury quiets them again, and I think that's a bit of a problem at that point.
Well, I have a couple of questions from a coaching perspective here. Post-match, you heard James Merriman say that Pacific were naive at times, just in moments of the game. And you heard Manny Aparicio say that they just didn't stick with their game plan. When your team went and played both Valor and Pacific, and you can even use Forge last night against Montreal, all in those performances, your side dug in and didn't give away that early goal, and you played within your defensive shape. It's just a matter of how long you can afford to stay in that defensive shape, versus being able to come out of it and play a different way. So what did you make of Pacific's approach? Because on the one side of the coin, it's admirable coming out, trying to play toe to toe with an MLS side, but it can be perceived as a little bit naive as well. So what did you make of their approach?
Yeah, I mean, Vancouver's an interesting team. The Whitecaps are actually quite direct if you really look at the way that they play. And I think if you were managing that field as well as you could, it's a shorter field, it's decently wide. You could have managed with some pressure to the ball, these balls that are going in behind. And certainly that would have helped, Didic and Merjaguer manage that really well. There's some speed on the outside at Pacific. That cover would have been there. I think that if you made them go around you more, most definitely you would have had an opportunity. For me, there was too much going through the middle. There was too much influence for the middle. And when you're looking at it in that perspective, that's going to kill you. Now it can go left, it can go right. You really have some problems at that point, which means, Didic, Merziger in this case have to make decisions if it's getting in. So they dump it in behind a few times, they get guys turning, and then they start to play it through the middle. And Vancouver can be a fantastic counterattacking team now that they have the players. My problem was that they weren't getting enough pressure to the ball to actually influence some of the stuff that was going in behind. Even if it wasn't connecting, it was starting to turn them and spread them and make them bigger, not more compact.
I think that was something that James Merriman spoke about after the game as well, was like the big strength of this Whitecaps side in some ways is their ability to turn the ball over in the central areas and then go the other way, right? With Kubas being probably their best player right now and integral in that. And it kind of felt like Pacific maybe had to adapt the way they would normally play to work around that, use the wide areas a bit more, and just didn't quite get into, although they did create some good chances, maybe didn't quite get into the rhythm they wanted in the game.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, when you're looking at it, Data Luke and these type of guys, like you can double up on the outside, the speed that they have if they're covered in the middle with Toussaint. I just thought too many guys pushed, forward too much all at the same time, and they didn't leave themselves sort of protection for the two center backs. And then you get moments like the turnover. At that point, I'm thinking, just delay them. Don't let Schaaf, start making moves. He's a Bundesliga player that can actually make the right decision at the right moment. Finished off by another, German American at this point, who, I mean, that's a world-class finish. And something I would say to my guys regularly, you're going to see moments that you don't see in your regular league play. That finish by Gressel is not something that happens on a week-to-week basis. He's capable of it. It's probably not week-to-week in MLS, but it's happening more often at that level than it would be in your league. So the naivety that maybe James talks about is actually just maybe sometimes, we don't see that all the time. How do we deal with that? And when you have turnover on rosters in CPL, MLS does as well. It's sometimes painful because you're actually redoing it year on year. This naivety concept is like, I'm having to train another group to get ready for this, one-time affair to go up against the big dogs. So I think that might be some of what the naivety is. I mean, for me, I thought Manny Aparicio might have been the best player on the pitch. Like, I don't know why he's not in the MLS, but they had some moments. They had some people there that they could have taken advantage of, and they pressed at the end. Unfortunate third goal, but they just couldn't get the ball in the net to actually make the crowd come back and start lifting it again.
Yeah, it was definitely tough. This was a team that was on the front foot right from the get-go. I mean, Vancouver had the kickoff and right away. I mean, Pacific was pressing them, but to your point, they left themselves a little bit exposed. It doesn't help when you have such a young goalkeeper as well in Gazdov. And there were just some, errors there that come with experience. You clean those up with experience, which he just doesn't have yet. And to your point, you took the crowd out of it early. Vancouver did a 14th minute goal, a 17th minute goal. When we go to the earlier game of CF Montreal and Forge, there were no goals in that first half, in the first 45. And if you're Montreal, you're probably thinking, and the fans, right? Because you're the top dog and Forge is still the CPL side. But then Montreal, Hernan Losada makes those changes. They come out fast and furious. So they walk away with the 2-0 victory. Were you surprised maybe by a little lack of bite by Forge, given that there's real belief? Like what this team, it's not just in the CPL, Will, like it's what they've done in CONCACAF League and, earning that spot in CONCACAF Champions League. This is a legit team.
Oh, 100%. I would say to you the same thing. It flips though, right? Because now you're the away squad. In this match we're talking about here, it's okay to deaden the crowd. Like you're hoping to. You're hoping to play with a little bit of confidence, keep the ball, keep it tight for 45. Where I rarely see a Forge game where I think these guys weren't planning that. The second half felt like it was a reaction rather than we're fine with this. We'll dig in for 5 minutes and 7-minute chunks. It felt really like, what are we going to do now? And I never feel that with Forge. I watch them in all different ways. They can win in different ways. And that's the most beautiful thing about Bobby and his squads that he puts together. Like, they can win in all different ways. I watched the Pacific match with them a couple weeks ago, and I think for the better part of the last 30 minutes, they barely touched the ball, but they didn't even look like it was bothering them one bit. Like, they're just no problem. Now they can play possession, they can play direct, they can do all these sort of things. The challenge I had in that second half was like, they changed. What do we do? And it's like they got more scared. And I say that with respect to guys who clearly are just playing the game. But mistakes that I don't think are very Forge-like, despite the fact that they're playing an MLS opposition. So it was a little, again, I was left wanting because I thought and felt Forge did have more in their locker to give.
Yeah, it was a tough one. And I know, Ollie, we were breaking down last night, Wheels, myself, and Jordan, just some of the mistakes. We saw that second goal. I mean, Mandrikar's been a guy on that back line that, has been praised for what he's been doing this year. That was just such an uncharacteristic mistake.
Yeah, that will frustrate them for sure. And the first goal is just like, if you're going to lose a game, you don't want to lose it off a deflection that wasn't properly defended in terms of the shot from distance and ends up falling Tristan Henry. So that will frustrate them. I did think last night with both games, we saw teams in terms of the MLS teams, and it's all three of them now, that have been stung in the past in this competition. They've all had to go to penalty shootouts. We know Vancouver's history, obviously, against CPL teams has been really ropey. We saw another big upset earlier in this competition in TSS Rovers, obviously, as well. And I think teams, particularly the MLS sides, seem to me now to be more on alert, particularly once you get to the semi-final stage, that these are real tests, right? And it's a big difference, I think, when you're looking at playing with the way MLS rosters are constructed. It's a big difference between when Victor Wanyama's in central midfield versus maybe the 16th, 17th guy on their roster who's a younger domestic player still kind of proving himself. So I think there's clearly been some lessons learned there from these teams, again, particularly when it gets to the last four. They're not messing around anymore with their team selection and approach to these games.
Yeah, you might also look at the fact that there's a change in the way that they can get to the Champions League. And, when that change was made, it's quicker, it's more, clean, you're in. So go win this competition, because winning the, MLS or other things like that are perhaps more difficult than taking on Forge or TSS Rovers or whomever you end up with. If you can win that game and move on, you're very close to doing the job in Champions League.
I have two questions. Do you guys, am I cool to ask them?
You may.
Okay. The first one is Vancouver gets to host another Canadian Championship final. We're hoping for a big crowd. This is your own backyard, a city with great footballing heritage, a love for the game of soccer as well. But that love affair at times with the Whitecaps seems fractured at times. Some of the crowds, not necessarily what you like to see. You have the emergence of Vancouver FC and Pacific and semi-professional clubs like TSS Rovers and your own, which have followings, which have support, which have interest, right? So what's the state of play in soccer in British Columbia, and where do the Whitecaps stand in all of this, and how do we continue to build out the fandom across the board within the province?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts on the pitch. You have to have a team that looks like it's capable of getting results on the weekend. Operationally, you want to engage a community. You want to build a community. For a long time there, it's been sort of animosity between the thick supporters, the Southsiders, and the organization. I think that's a big challenge. And I think ultimately they need to kind of reset with the idea that football people who live in that city need to be engaged. Because why grow the game outside of those that are already in it? Grow it with those that are in it. I mean, it sounds strange and it sounds crazy, but it's the truth. There's thousands and thousands of kids and coaches and parents that are in that game already. Go to them, invite them back, start participating with them on their terms, not just your terms. I think that's been a challenge from what I understand. Toronto as well as Montreal, it's like we're the big dogs, it's our terms. When you flip that narrative to supporters first, and we're stewards, which happens in the rest of the world, you change the way that the conversation begins to happen. And I think that more of these owners in MLS who it's an NBA model or NFL model, if more of them came with the mindset of stewards, we would have an awful lot more supporters being grown through participation in the sport themselves.
Mm-hmm. Second question, really quick, and you feel free to piggyback off that as well. But you had your first taste of the Canadian Championship. We are huge fans of the Voyageurs Cup, huge fans of the Canadian Championship, but it seems like there's still a long way to go and room to grow. What would you like to see change? How would you like to see this tournament expand or alter itself?
I think I said it on the back half of one of the games. I'm all about sustainability. Like I was a player when the CSL was happening and it went out of business. I was a player coming through the ranks when the NASL went out. I would never want that for any of my, kids, people I coach. I don't want them to feel like it's not going to happen next year because we're all out of business. So sustainability is a big priority. So it has to grow effectively. We're not in a rush to get anywhere. We're in a rush to be sustainable and supportive of what can happen for these communities. So you're making sure that people show up. I have a challenge. I personally don't like in the U.S. With the U.S. Open Cup and the Voyageurs Cup that the big dogs are not as invested as the small teams. Okay, and I forgive me for calling CPL teams small, but in relationship to MLS teams, I want that Whitecaps to care as much about promoting those games on a Wednesday night. We have a real challenge of teaching people that Wednesday after a Saturday game is coming and you need to go to the game again and you need to support with the same effort. So teaching, educating that this is as important or more important and why, what is the end game of a Voyageurs Cup? Well, the end game is getting to play this team, this team, this team, this team. Oh, wow. What is that all about? So it's incumbent upon us. And this is why I love OneSoccer. And I love the idea that there's shows like this happening again. We used to grow up with Graham Leggett telling us what's happening in the world of football. We need to educate the lay population about football in Canada and North America. And forget that there's lots of people that do know. Those people need to come to the table and help us with the education. Yeah. So for me, that's what I want to see. I want to see all of the clubs committed to the idea that they're educating what the Voyageurs Cup means and why it's so important.
Mm-hmm. Well said. And I think you just gave us an idea to do some pretty incredible features, Ollie, where we can obviously promote the Voyageurs Cup. It's just such a Canadian thing too, as well, right? To just sometimes not promote ourselves. And maybe it's time to, flip that switch and to see this grow, because inevitably it's going to grow. Well, obviously we have a lot of faith in the Canadian Premier League. The more teams that get added to that, correct. You start to see it grow, and the competition will also start to command its attention in the market. But the players, the teams, the broadcasters all need to support its importance.
Well, it's a Canadian way. It's like we're cynical first. We are so hard on ourselves and the people that are invested in the game in this country. It's crazy to me. We find ways to pick apart and tear down rather than lift up. It's just, it needs to stop. It's just, anyways.
Well, can I ask one more? Because I don't want to keep one more quickly. I know we want to get Will's thoughts on the final as well. But
hang out for the entire show.
Yeah. We obviously love seeing the League One teams in this competition. They're fantastic storylines, fantastic matches every year. Practically, how was it for you guys this year? We're putting these matches on, hosting obviously the first rounder. There's still challenges there that, you know, maybe we can progress in the years to come.
Massive challenges. You know, to be told you have to have 15 security guards and you have no idea what that is from a standpoint of where they go, what they do. Like, everything's new, right? And this is like, you know, the concept of even just relating it to the game there, where Schaaf and Gressel combined, like, that's new for some of the guys feeling that. It's the same thing off the field. And this is why I say sustainability is probably the first thing you need to have in order for those stories to continue always, because we have to go out now, you know, if someone wins our league, we have to support them inside of our own League One BC and kind of go, guys, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to need to have this, and this in place. I think League One Canada can also support us at a higher level, in not that they didn't support us, but that they can be preparing people and CPL and MLS. Hey guys, what can we do to help? Where can we support you? Because we know that you're the coach, the GM, the water bottle guy, all, you know, washing the uniforms. This is what you're going to be up against. And this is how you should prepare or otherwise. And I think that would be really practical. And again, I think that that's just part of being, you know, a young competition, so to speak, or adding this makes it young and small. But we can help these people. And then if you want to add 2 from League One Ontario because they're a bigger province, or you want to add a second or whatever, everybody's prepared and on the same page, so you don't have any eyesores, if you will, on stadiums or what the quality looks like or what the quality in the pitch looks like.
Yeah, logistics. Everyone sees the product like once it's on camera, but you don't realize all the work
100%.
and everything that goes on behind the scenes and the dollars and cents that also costs, right? So more support clearly makes for a better product. Before we let you go, Will, I got to put you on the hot seat here and get a prediction, because as we know, the Canadian Championship final is set between CF Montreal. Vancouver Whitecaps will be hosting them June 7th, BC Place, 10 p.m. Eastern time. It'll go. Who do you think is the favorite in this one?
Well, I think you're going to have to, absolutely, it has to be the Whitecaps at this point. I was at the match where they throttled Montreal 5-0. I think they're quite tight with their system right now. The people they've added have added a lot of quality. Certainly the people off the bench, on the bench, coming in, making them deeper. I think Montreal is stabilizing, but depth-wise, you know, it's a big change from last year. It's not the same squad. You know, I love guys like Sean Rea. I think he's fantastic. These are the guys they're bringing in. Vancouver's a little deeper. So, you know, I think it's got to be Vancouver at home. It's certainly not going to be an easy test. It's an MLS versus MLS. Anything can happen when it's 2 Canadian sort of rivals as well. But right now, I think Montreal is rebuilding, unfortunately for them, rebuilding what they're about, what they want to do, where their next generation is going to come from. Whereas Vancouver's kind of at the sort of coming up the mountain here in terms of how the pieces have been put in place. You know, yesterday Gauld was just sitting on the bench. You know, start adding some of these guys in. Yeah, probably, exactly, right. But you know, start adding all those guys in, and that's a pretty formative 11 to 14 players at minimum. When you talk about Ali Ahmed and some of these guys that are really, really starting to make the depth of that squad look much more fantastic than it has been in the last few years. So I think it's got to be Vancouver. But, you know, Canadians versus Canadians, maybe Montreal pulls a mini Rovers.
We'll see how that goes on June 7th. Will, it's been an absolute blast having you on.
Polisi available?
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Well, again, thanks so much for joining us. We have your number. So now we're going to be bugging you a lot more.
You.
Awesome, Will. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. See you guys.
See you later. Will Cromack, head coach of TSS Rovers. They were the League One BC champions last year, so they earned a spot in the Canadian Championship this year. As we know, they went on to have this incredible story of beating Valor and moving into the quarterfinals, ultimately losing to Pacific. But it was great having him on.